How does consciousness and the UFO phenomenon interact with each other? What's it all about? Well, Colm, Kelleher, and George Knapp really get into it in the recent interview that Colm had with the podcast Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And it was a great interview, and I highly recommend checking out the full thing. But in this one segment, they're talking about consciousness and how it relates to UFOs. So let's talk about it. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please hit subscribe and the bell to be notified of future videos. Please join me on social media. Facebook and Twitter links are below. And of course, let me know what you think in the comments below. I have long been fascinated by the interaction between human consciousness and possibly other consciousness as well with the UFO phenomenon. When I first began investigating the phenomenon in 2017, because before then I was not a believer until those Navy videos came out, so thank you, Lou and Chris. Changed my worldview a lot and started me down one deep dive after another into every little subject related to this. It quickly became apparent to me that consciousness played a part in this. Now, I wasn't sure what that meant at the time. I was an atheist at the time. I didn't believe in any spiritual connection or any metaphysics. And even when I did finally have to face the reality that metaphysics were tied up with the UFO phenomenon, I at first wanted to ascribe a more scientific definition on dimensions and so on. And some of that may well come into play. I think it does. I think that we're all dealing with the natural state of being, but the natural state of being is much more complex than we would otherwise may have thought. At least I did. But it did become apparent to me eventually that we're dealing with a lot more than simple physics, even complicated physics that I would be familiar with or even recognize as physics. We were talking about spiritual stuff. 1/3 of all alien abductees are near-death experiencers. People who have died, cross the veil, and come back. People see the dead aboard UFOs, and they get into that a little bit aboard in this video as well. And there's all sorts of spiritual connections. People will see Archangel Michael aboard a UFO. It's very interesting. It goes on and on and on. But some of those could be screen memories. It's entirely possible that the beings could be implanting false visuals onto contactees to reassure them or the like. And indeed, I think they do stuff like that regularly. They do give people false visuals of one sort or another. But there does seem to be more to it than that, judging by the number of abductees that are actually near-death experiencers and the number of abductees or contactees that once they begin getting abducted, they will often develop abilities like psi abilities, healing abilities, other abilities. But what other role does consciousness have to play? Well, people see UFOs differently. Some people will look at a UFO and see one thing, some another thing. But don't take my word for all of this. Let's listen to what Colm Kelleher has to say. And bear in mind, he was the leader of NIDS, Bob Bigelow's scientific team that researched Skinwalker Ranch, as well as BASS, which was, the government program, or actually that was the Bigelow program that ran the government charter of OSAP, as the technical explanation as far as I understand. So anyway, he knows a thing or two about this. So let's listen to what Colm has to say.
Something that interests them, certainly, but something they need from us, or is it symbiotic?
I feel that, maybe one of the agendas is human consciousness, that an interaction with UFOs may provoke changes in human consciousness. And sort of, we are back to the sort of original discussion point, but, one of the incidents that happened on the Skinwalker Ranch is kind of is emblematic of this whole thing, and that is that we had 6 people on the ranch. Suddenly, all 6 of them had night vision binoculars, and this light object popped up just from behind Skinwalker Ridge. Popped up, it was sort of just over the ridge. And so it just happened that all 6 people had night vision binoculars. They exactly the same make and model. All 6 of them looked at this object, and through night vision binoculars, it was like greatly magnified. The light was magnified tremendously through this, low vision amplification. And so there was a sort of a debriefing that occurred later that evening, after that evening had passed. And it turned out that all 6 individuals saw completely different things through the night vision binoculars. So, I mean, I'm using that as a metaphor for saying that human perception is altered in many cases as a result or during UFO interactions. So maybe human perception, as it pertains to human consciousness, is one of the objectives where the UFO phenomenon is somehow interacting with human consciousness for a purpose. I don't know what that purpose is.
A lot of people, they have UFO experiences, and then just to add to how weird things are for them, they start seeing dead people.
That's a very good point.
It's sort of, in your day job, and we're not really talking about your job now, but you work on consciousness issues all the time. It
Right.
goes right back to the beginning of NIDS. NIDS is remembered today as a UFO organization, but it wasn't. There were 2 main parts of NIDS. One was, are we alone in the universe, investigating UFOs and related phenomena? And the other was, does human consciousness survive physical death? Do we go on? Is there a soul, something that goes on? Now it's kind of come full circle for you, and you're focusing more on that side, survival of death. Do we go on? Which is also form of consciousness studies. And it all
Boom, there you go. Consciousness plays a huge part in all this. And I think it's really interesting the way he's describing the event where there's several UFO watchers that have seen this object, and they're all seeing different things. I wish he had gone into some sort of explanation or detail about specifically what individual things do these guys see. But that dovetails very well with my own experiences and experiences that I know many others have had. I was at a Skywatch that my MUFON group did recently, where people were seeing objects moving around in the sky that were, seemed to be classic, luminous white object, sorts of UFOs. I wasn't seeing it, and about half of the group wasn't seeing it, but several people were seeing it. And, what's the explanation for that? I don't know. And the Skywatch that we did previous to that, it wasn't nuts and bolts objects that people were seeing. It was more metaphysical stuff, and they were seeing a lot of it with their eyes closed. But again, some people were seeing it and some people weren't. In my own UFO sighting, which only my wife and I were present, well, technically other people were present because we were driving, on the road, and there's various other people on the road, of course. But this sighting seemed to be just for me. It was interacting with my consciousness, and it was giving me something through this experience that I had been looking for. And nobody else, presumably, would be, it was just for me. So my wife didn't see it. I doubt that anybody else driving that night saw it either. So it does interact with our consciousness in some way, and it reveals itself to some people and it doesn't to others. And as Colm Kelleher gives in this example, sometimes it will show itself in different ways to different people. How does that make sense? I don't know. But the conversation then moves on to people that interact with UFOs, then sometimes will go on to see the dead. And indeed, there's a lot of poltergeist and ghostly activity associated with UFO phenomenon. And there's a lot of people that come back from their experiences with abilities. A lot of these abilities seem to be spiritual in nature, hands-on healing and other things. they seem to have a greater spiritual connection a lot of the time. And part of that seems to encompass them interacting with their loved ones who have moved on. And I find that extremely fascinating. What does that mean? It seems like the beings are changing people in some way, making them more able to receive these messages and this contact and these visitations, and to have abilities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. To me, those can't all be explained by screen memories. I mean, people are actually running around healing people and having psychic interactions and stuff. So I'm not buying the screen memory theory for all of those. Those do not seem to be all false memories or the like. So I think there is something real going on, something very, very interesting, spiritual, metaphysical, whatever it is. But it seems to be a thing that's happening. I didn't used to believe in any of this, but since learning about it, I've wanted to get involved in it. And, I started up or co-founded a ghost hunting group. I started learning Reiki, and now I'm a Reiki master. I'm actually in one level above a Reiki master. When in Reiki, we do something called attunements. When through a series of attunements, you are aligned with these energies, this healing energy, and you can now use the symbols that we use in Reiki. Those symbols are imprinted on you. But I'm wondering if something like that attunement might be taking place among these contactees and abductees that come back with these abilities. Did they get attuned? Did they get their spiritual bandwidth increased by some sort of attunement or similar, mechanism, a spiritual, metaphysical mechanism, consciousness mechanism? Did something like that happen that enabled them to see and talk to the dead and to have these other various abilities? I don't know, guys. I'm just throwing that out there. What do you think? Well, let me know in the comments below. What do you think about different people seeing different things when they're looking at UFOs? What does that mean? How can some people can see them and some people can't? In my own sighting, I saw it and my wife didn't. But at the previous sky watches, I was the one that didn't see anything, and the other people were the ones that were seeing stuff. So what does it all mean, guys? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. That'd be awesome. Please smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. That'd be awesome. Share this video on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. And of course, check out some of my other videos. Until next time, this is Jack with Cosmic Road signing out.